Megan changed the locks while the florist was still carrying leftover centerpieces out to her van. I stood on the front walk in my black suit, collar damp with drizzle, the folded program from Lucas's service soft in my hand, watching a woman I'd called family punch a new code into what used to be my front door, my door in every way but the paperwork. On paper, the deed belonged to Lucas and Megan. My name lived on the mortgage as the guy with the down payment and the credit score. I'd moved in 9 months earlier, when his second round of chemo turned the staircase into an enemy. By then, they were already sleeping in separate rooms and pretending it was about rest. "Rob, you've got 10 minutes, Megan said, eyes on the keypad. "Whatever you can carry is yours. After that, I need you out. This is my house now." The locksmith hunched over his toolbox, doing a good impression of a man who heard nothing. I could have told her which floorboard in the hallway squeaked because Lucas and I laid it crooked. I could have pointed to the dent in the banister where he'd crashed a remote control car in 8th grade. What came out instead was hoarse and smaller than I liked. 10 minutes, I repeated. She turned. Her eyes were red, not TV red but raw, like she'd actually been crying. For half a second her mouth shook, like she hadn't decided yet whether to break down or lash out. Then she chose. Megan reached into her bag, pulled out a folded document. The page trembled once in her hand before she forced it still and held it out. "Before this gets ugly," she said. "Lucas's will. He wrote it after the last scan. The house, his shares in Sentinel, the trust, everything comes to me." Lucas and Megan had taken a break about 9 months before he died. 2 months before the end, she moved back in to help with treatment. I let myself believe it was for him, because the alternative, that she came back for access, tasted worse than hospital coffee. Now she was handing me his final wishes like a parking ticket. I reached for the paper and missed by an inch. My fingers were slower than my brain. Grief does that. I adjusted, took it properly, hoping she hadn't noticed. The handwriting looked like Lucas's. Big, impatient letters, lines crowded a little too tight. But under the porch light, the ink sat on the page wrong. It caught the light with a faint, fresh shine, even though the date at the top said 6 months ago. Some old part of my mind, that quiet internal auditor, scratched a note in the margin. "Rob, I know this is hard," Megan said, dropping her voice. "He was terrified of leaving me with nothing. He trusted me to handle all of this. He didn't want to upset you." "He never mentioned a will," I said. She flinched, barely. "He knew how you get about control. He didn't want to fight when he was already dealing with everything else." Her other hand came up with her phone, thumb flicking almost lazily over the screen. "Sentinel will be fine," she went on. "The partners are smart. I'll make sure nothing stupid happens with his shares. Sentinel NetSEC. Lucas's security company." I'd helped him pick the name and then stepped back, like a parent letting go of the bike seat. That was supposed to be his thing, not mine. "And the trust?" I asked. She hesitated just a fraction too long. "The Lucas Kane Support Trust is a lot of money sitting in an account with no real structure," she said. Lucas's heart was huge, but he gave to anyone who sounded desperate. "I'm going to put guardrails on it. Verification, proper approvals. That's what he talked about, actually, doing it right." Her chin lifted, like she needed me to agree so she could believe herself. The trust existed because he once saw a family sleeping in their minivan outside the hospital. He'd been hooked up to a drip and still furious on their behalf. "If I ever have money," he'd told me, "it's for people like that first." "The trust paid for the reception?" I said. "Of course," she answered, and there was a flicker of color in her cheeks. "The charter allows for founder legacy events." It was beautiful. He wouldn't have wanted a sad church basement lunch. My grip on the program tightened until the paper creased. I started to say, he would have, and stopped, because the rest of that sentence would have broken something open I wasn't ready to show her. "We're not monsters, Rob," she added, softer. I know this, looks bad. But I'm trying to keep things from spinning out. For a heartbeat, she sounded like the woman Lucas fell for, tired, scared, trying to sound competent. Then she glanced toward the street, saw a neighbor watching from their porch, and the softness snapped off. Elliot's moving in next week, she said. I'm not asking him to step over your boxes. So, yes, 10 minutes. By Sunday, the security app gets updated. New users, new codes, clean slate. The words landed a half-second late. Elliot, I said. The paramedic. Her jaw tightened. We've been together almost a year. Lucas and I were over long before that last round. I came back because I'm not the kind of person who leaves someone in a hospital bed alone. You saw the slideshow. I was there. The back of my neck prickled. I looked past her into the house. The couch where Lucas slept when his joints couldn't forgive the stairs. The blanket he dragged around. The photo wall over the fireplace, engagement pictures, launch party shots, hospital selfies where he flipped off the 4-pole and made the nurses laugh. Do you mind taking those down before you go? Megan asked quietly. The photos. Especially in the living room. It's too much. I can't breathe in there with him staring at me. For once, I believed her. I'll see what I can do, I said. Inside, the air smelled like lilies and burnt coffee. In the entryway, I set the will on the table, took out my phone, and snapped 2 quick photos, full page, then signature. To anyone watching, it was an old man fumbling with his camera. To me, it was muscle memory, get a clean copy before anything changes. I kept moving. Clothes from the guest room dresser. A box of dog-eared case notes. My shaving kit. In Lucas's room, the half-built drone on his desk made my vision swim. I reached out, fingers brushing the carbon fiber frame, then pulled back like it was hot. I took a shoebox of photos instead. In the little office, my battered government-issue laptop sat under a drift of insurance forms. Officially, it had been wiped when I retired. Unofficially, it still carried a handful of tools I'd written myself for pulling apart files and logs when standard software wasn't enough. I slid it into its faded case. Whatever Megan thought I was now, I knew exactly what that machine made me capable of. Back in the entryway, I glanced once more at the will. The strokes were right. The date was right. The ink still wasn't. Don't worry about the trust, Megan called as I opened the door. I'll bring in people who understand fundraising and compliance. No offense, Rob, but this isn't the early 2000s. You can't just write checks because someone cries on the phone. The world's savvier now. No offense taken, I said. Outside, the wind tugged at the white ribbon still tied to the porch rail from the memorial. I stepped off the threshold and felt, more than I had at the cemetery, like I was leaving my son's life completely. I didn't look back until I hit the sidewalk. Megan thought she'd pushed a grieving father out of a house where he no longer belonged. She'd also put a suspicious will, a vulnerable trust, and her own fingerprints on all of it, right in front of the one person who knew how to read every line. 3 days after I walked out of Lucas's house, my phone rang. Rob, this has to stop, Megan said as soon as I answered. No hello. Whatever you're doing, whatever story you're spreading, it ends now. I looked at the little table in my rented studio. My old laptop was open, county email on the screen. That morning the probate clerk had sent a scanned copy of Lucas's will for your records as interested party. I downloaded it, then just stared at the subject line for 20 minutes. What do you think I'm doing? I asked. Don't play dumb, she snapped. You've been harassing people. The bank. The trust accountant. Sentinel's partners. Calling around, telling them I forged the will while I'm still dealing with funeral arrangements. Either she was lying, or somebody had started asking those questions for me. My money was on the first. I'm trying to understand what Lucas actually wanted, I said. His wishes are literally on paper, she said. The will's probated. It's legal. The house, his shares, the trust, mine to manage. You don't have a say. If you keep throwing forgery around, I'll get a restraining order and tell every reporter in this city you're harassing a widow. Her voice shook on widow. Whether from grief or anger, I couldn't tell. When did he write it? I asked. You know when, she shot back. After the last scan, 6 months ago. He wrote it by hand because he wanted it personal. You weren't around for that conversation. Right, I said quietly. This obsession isn't healthy, Rob, she added. If you email one more donor, one board member, anyone, I go public. She hung up hard. The studio went suddenly, stupidly loud, the fridge humming, traffic under the window, my own pulse. I turned back to the laptop. The first thing I'd done with the clerk's email, once I'd stopped just staring at Lucas's name, was save the attached PDF of the will and run a basic file properties pull. Not hacking, not magic. Just asking the document what it knew about itself. The created timestamp on the PDF wasn't when Lucas wrote the will. It was when the file came into existence, when someone scanned it. 2:47 p.m. on the day of his funeral. The software tag listed the device, a mid-range scanner model used in copy centers and office supply shops. The file path embedded in the metadata helpfully included a machine name, copy_03 at Inkstop Glendale. I typed that into a search bar. Inkstop Copy and Print shared a strip mall south of Denver with a coffee chain and a mailbox rental place. The same afternoon we lowered Lucas into the ground. Megan had taken his 6-month-old will to a copy shop and scanned it there. Not illegal on its face. Plenty of people use chain stores instead of home printers. But it didn't match the story she was selling, some private, sacred document discovered in a desk, carefully preserved. I saved the metadata dump, copied it to a thumb drive I kept in my jacket. Old habit, never trust OneDrive to outlive your anger. Then I logged into the online portal for the Lucas Kane Support Trust. Lucas had given me that access code during his second hospital stay, scribbled on the back of a takeout menu. Just in case I get loopy, he'd said, joking about chemo brain. If you see anything shady, yell. The early records were what we talked about, rent checks sent straight to landlords, hospital payments, modest travel stipends wired to families camped in pediatric oncology wards. About 18 months ago, something new started. Every few weeks, a neat line with a vague label. Program review. Strategy consulting. Impact analysis. Different company names, same debit amount each time. Just shy of $7,000. Over and over. The description fields were copy-paste jobs. The approvals were not. Each transfer had a digital stamp next to it, user ID, timestamp. Megan.K. Grief pushed up in my throat then, not about the money, but about Lucas, lying in a hospital bed thinking he was lightening her load by giving her the logins. I paged backward and forward. The pattern held. Real grants to real families, and then these little precise leaks. I started a quick handwritten list. Date, company, amount. My handwriting wasn't built for neat spreadsheets, but it didn't have to be pretty, it just had to be clear. My phone buzzed on the table. Yeah, I answered. Still answering like you're on a wire, a familiar voice said. You do remember you retired, right? Nadia, I said. Some of the tightness in my chest loosened. You got my message. Encrypted PDF of a will and 3 pages of notes at 5 a.m. my time, she said. Hard to miss. My analysts thought you were testing them. Please tell me this is not about you getting cut out of a house. If it were just the house, I'd complain to a bartender, not to you, I said. I think Megan forged Lucas's will. And I think she's been siphoning his trust. Her tone shifted into the old briefing room register. Give me the short version. I walked her through it. The PDF's creation time on the day of the funeral. The copy shop machine name. The repeating near $7,000 transfers to soft-sounding consultants, all approved under Megan.K. Kept it clipped and technical. If I let myself talk about Lucas instead of user IDs, I wasn't sure my voice would hold. I can't open a full case file for you, she said when I finished. Not without stepping on a lot of toes. But I can have someone in imaging look at the scan, stroke patterns, printing artifacts, maybe an estimate on when that ink hit the page. Send me the original PDF through the tunnel you used. Already sent, I said. Good. Give me a little while. Don't burn the place down until I call back. She hung up. I went back to the trust portal, scrolling through months of names. Families from small towns and big cities, each line item a version of the same quiet disaster, eviction notices, final demand letters from utilities, unpaid hospital bills. Mixed in with them, those clean consultant payments looked like someone had slipped a leech into a blood bag. By the time my phone rang again, the light outside had shifted from gray to dark. You're not crazy, Nadia said without preamble. Our print analyst took a look. The ink on that will doesn't match the timeline. My fingers tightened on the edge of the table. How far off? I asked. The writing itself is a strong visual match to the samples you gave us, same hand, same habits, she said. But the ink's chemical signature lines up with a consumer pen that didn't hit the retail market until a couple of months ago. Whatever's on that page is a lot younger than the date at the top. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It came out shaky and made me angry at myself. So we're looking at probable forgery, I said. Probable, she confirmed. You'll still need more, chain of custody, financials, witness contradictions. But if Megan's telling people the will's been sitting in a drawer for 6 months, that scan says otherwise. Copy shop scanner, funeral day, I said quietly. Not exactly a sacred moment. Yeah, she said. Look, I can't promise my office will pick this up officially. But if you keep documenting what you're seeing, every transfer, every login, every inconsistency, you're going to have something your local white-collar people can't ignore. After we hung up, I sat there a minute with the laptop open, the trust ledger glowing blue in the dark room. Lucas had trusted Megan enough to share his passwords when he got too tired to sit through bored calls. He'd trusted me enough to say, if it looks shady, yell. I wasn't ready to yell yet. But I was done wondering if I was just a paranoid, grieving father. Now I knew, the story she was telling didn't match the story the data told. And in my world, the data wins. 2 days later, I walked into Sentinel's office for the first time since Lucas rang the little brass bell on the wall and called them a real company now. Same humming racks, same burned coffee smell, same half-finished whiteboard diagrams. Without him, the place felt like someone had moved the center of gravity 3 inches to the left. Eli met me in the glass conference room. Nisha slipped in behind him with a legal pad. Rob, Eli said. We heard about everything at the house. You holding up? Define holding, I said. I won't take long. I've been combing through the trust's ledger. I've seen transfers to a few consultants, Northline Strategies, Summit Impact, Riverstone Analytics. I need to know if Sentinels paid any of those names too. Nisha and Eli exchanged a look. She started sending these last fall, Nisha said, flipping open a folder. Long before Lucas got really bad. She slid a couple of invoices across the table. Summit Impact Solutions. Impact Metrics and Board Training. Amount, $6,980. 2 invoices. Same amount. Same vague language. We told her we needed to review internal policy before paying everything, Nisha said. Then called our attorney as soon as she left. Did you ever actually meet anyone from Summit? I asked. Just emails, Eli said. Generic address, no last names. When I suggested a Zoom, Megan said they don't do client-facing calls. I checked the invoice header. The mailing address was a mailbox at a strip mall in Glendale. I'd seen that address already. Can I take these? I asked. Please, Nisha said. Honestly, we've been wondering if we were crazy for thinking this smelled bad. It's nice to hear we weren't. Back at the studio, I pulled up the state's business registry and typed Summit Impact Solutions. LLC, formed last year. Registered agent, Elliot Hart. My jaw tightened. Next search, Northline Strategies. Same strip mall mailbox. Same Elliot as agent. Riverstone Analytics. Same pattern. So that was their division of labor, Megan signed, Elliot siphoned. My phone lit up on the table. Mr. Kane, a man said when I answered. This is Detective Alvarez, Denver PD Financial Crimes. I got your name from a colleague in D.C., Reyes. Said you're, quote, annoyingly thorough. Nadia, working fast. Then she hasn't changed, I said. What can I do for you, detective? We've been reviewing some odd payments from local nonprofits, Alvarez said. Summit Impact, Riverstone Analytics, Northline. Your name keeps popping up in connection with the Lucas Kane Support Trust. I have invoices from Sentinel, bank records from the trust, and a will that doesn't match its own paperwork, I said. That's what I was hoping to hear, he replied. You're not a suspect, Mr. Kane. Right now, you're the only one treating this like a crime scene. I'd like you to bring whatever you have down to the division before this turns into a bigger mess than it already is. I looked at the invoices on my desk, the registry pages on my screen, the trust ledger still open. Lucas had built something to keep people afloat. Megan and Elliot had turned it into plumbing for their own private cash line. I'll be there in an hour, I said. The financial crimes unit lived in a tired brick building that smelled like old carpet and burnt coffee. My kind of place. Detective Alvarez met me in a small interview room with a crooked whiteboard and 2 plastic chairs. Late 30s, rumpled tie, eyes that had stared at too many numbers. Mr. Kane, he said, standing just enough to be polite. Thanks for coming. I set my laptop bag and a folder on the table. You said to bring whatever I had. This is it. He cracked a smile. Reyes in D.C. undersold you. Nadia Reyes, working fast again. We spent 20 minutes walking through the pile. I laid out the trust ledger with Megan.K approving every consulting transfer. The Summit Impact invoices to Sentinel. The registry printouts tying Summit, Northline, and Riverstone to Elliot's name and that strip mall mailbox. The probate PDF of the will, with its copy shop scanner metadata from the day of the funeral. Alvarez listened more than he talked, tapping his pen, letting the records do the work. When I finished, he slid a thinner stack back across. Here's what we had before you, he said. 2 small charities, one for kids with heart defects, one for housing veterans. Different missions, different boards. Same 3 vendors. Summit Impact. Northline Strategies. Riverstone Analytics. Same vague invoices. Same just under $7,000 payments. Same mailbox. We don't handle will validity here, Alvarez said, nodding at the probate copy. That's probate court, and maybe the DA if forgery sticks. What I do handle is fake vendors and charity money going missing. And if Megan's signing off while her boyfriend owns the mailboxes, that's squarely in my lane. How much so far? I asked. Across the 3? He grimaced. North of $200,000. $200,000. In this world, that's not a headline number. It's rent for a dozen families. Flights to treatment. A year's worth of meds someone's choosing between and groceries. I thought of the names in the trust ledger and had to unclench my hands from the folder. Alvarez looked away for a beat, like he was giving me space. You sure you want to be in the middle of this? He asked. You could dump it on us and walk away. Let the machine grind. Lucas asked me to yell if anything looked shady, I said. This is me yelling. Just, on paper. He huffed a short laugh. Fair enough. He slid a form over. Officially, this makes you a complainant and a primary witness. Unofficially, I'm going to lean on you as a subject matter guy, as long as you don't start playing cowboy. No badge, no gun, no jurisdiction, I said. I remember how this works. He nodded, satisfied, then pulled out a glossy postcard. Navy and silver. The Lucas Kane Support Trust, Hope Gala and Relaunch. Lucas smiled from one corner, Megan from the other in a black dress, hand over her heart. 3 weeks from now, Alvarez said. Hotel ballroom, sponsors, media, big checks on big boards. Your son's face, her on stage talking about relaunching his vision. She moved the date up right after he died. My jaw ached from how hard I was clenching it. If we're going to move on this, he went on, that event is a clean place to do it. Cameras, press, both of them in one room. But we need the case tight, no surprises, no holes. You're planning to hit them there, I said. I'm planning to have options, he replied. Anything from a quiet, come talk to us Monday, to walking in with a warrant while the cameras are already rolling. Between now and then, we subpoena accounts, talk to the other charities, make sure when we move, it sticks. He studied me. I can't tell you not to go, he said. It's your son's name on the banner. But if you're there, you stay in your seat. No confrontations, no scenes. Let me do my job. I looked down at the invitation, at Lucas frozen mid-laugh. I'll be there, I said. I'll stay in my chair. He held my gaze a second too long. I won't promise I'll stay quiet, I added. The 3 weeks before the gala felt like waiting for a verdict. On paper, things moved fast. Alvarez called every few days with updates. I went down to the division twice, sat in the same plastic chair, and watched the file grow heavier. Subpoenaed records tied everything together. Money out of the trust, the Kids' Heart Charity, the Veterans Housing Nonprofit to Summit, Northline, Riverstone. Then, within days, money out of those shells into a joint account with Megan and Elliot's names on it. A few cash withdrawals just under reporting thresholds. A couple of big payments to a boutique Megan liked to post bags from. Charity to fake vendor to shell to lifestyle, Alvarez said, pen ticking each step. Donors think they're buying rent and prescriptions. These two are buying shoes. He looked almost offended by how simple it was. Email logs and IP data came next. Login approvals on the trust and one of the other charities from Megan's laptop, Megan's phone, Megan's home router. You're sure this is her? He asked. Unless she's got a clone with the same sloppy update habits, I said. Local TV ran a segment with Megan sitting on a bench outside the hospital where Lucas had done some of his treatment. Looked like she'd made good on her morning show interview threat, scaled down to the local market first. They're trying to tear down everything Lucas built, she told the camera, voice breaking in exactly the right place. He wanted me to make the trust stronger, more accountable, and now his father is struggling. I just hope he finds peace. Behind her, the trust's logo floated on screen next to a donation link. I watched the clip once with the sound off. Then with sound on. Then I closed the tab before I threw something. At night, when sleep wouldn't come, I read through Lucas's old emails, the ones I'd backed up before I left the house. He documented everything, early board debates, donor calls, spreadsheets full of families and numbers. In one draft folder I found an unsent email addressed to me. Subject, guardrails, the kind Megan won't like. 3 bullet points. Dual approvals over X amount. Outside audits. No relatives or partners as paid vendors. Then a line at the bottom, if I'm too sick to fight about this, you do it for me. I sat with that sentence for a long time, the laptop fan the only sound in the room. I'm late, I said to the empty air. But I'm trying, kid. A week before the gala, Alvarez called. We're there, he said. Clean trail, charity shells Megan and Elliot. Approvals from her devices. Shells in his name. I've got the DA on board and Reyes leaning on the feds for wire fraud charges. Nadia doesn't do lean quietly, I said. Lucky for us, he replied. We'll have warrants in hand by gala night. One for her, one for him, one for the Shell records. We could grab them at home, but... Public deterrent, I said. Exactly. Donors are generous when they believe someone's actually watching the till. He hesitated. You still planning to go? He asked. Yes. Then remember our deal, you don't approach them, you don't start the show. You sit, you watch, I do the ugly part. No speeches, no scenes, I said. I remember. The night of the gala, I stood in front of the mirror in my studio and knotted the navy tie Lucas had bought me when I retired. Can't walk into civilian life looking like a probation officer, he'd said back then. The knot wasn't as clean as when he'd done it for me, but it held. On the little table by the door, I laid out what I was taking: wallet, phone, a thumb drive with duplicate case files, pure habit. Alvarez already had everything, and the printed invitation with Lucas smiling from the corner. For a moment, I pictured the version of the night we were supposed to have, Lucas at the podium, awkward in a suit, joking about hospital coffee and thanking people for keeping families off parking lot concrete. Then I opened the door. Outside, the air was cold and clear. My ride pulled up, the driver leaned over to unlock the back. Hyatt downtown? He asked. Yeah, I said, sliding in. As we merged onto the highway, my phone buzzed. We're in position. Remember our deal, Alvarez had texted. I typed back, I sit. You cuff. The hotel rose ahead of us, a glass box glowing against the dark. Whatever happened inside, one way or another, this was where the story Megan had written ran out of room. After tonight, Lucas's name wouldn't protect her anymore. The Hyatt ballroom was all glass and gold and money. By the time I walked in, it was already humming, round tables in white linen, donors in suits and sequins, a string quartet in the corner playing something expensive sounding. A banner over the stage read: The Lucas Kane Support Trust, Hope Gala and Relaunch. Lucas's face smiled from one side of it. Megan's name sat under Founder's Remarks on the program. I gave my name at the check-in table, accepted a little place card with Robert Kane, founding board on it, and let a volunteer steer me to a table near the back. Good sightline to the stage. Better sightline to the exits. Alvarez was already there, in a suit that almost fit, standing near the side doors and pretending to study his phone. I caught his eye, he gave the slightest nod. Two other people in the room had the same politely alert posture and, generic plus, shoes. Detectives trying to look like donors. The lights dimmed. A local news anchor emceed, the same one who'd interviewed Megan on that hospital bench. Speeches started. A doctor talked about outcomes. A former recipient thanked the trust for keeping his family housed. A slideshow rolled behind them, kids in gowns, parents holding hands, Lucas in a knit cap giving a thumbs up from an infusion chair. Then they called Megan up. She walked to the podium in a black dress, hair perfect, eyes shining just enough. The room gave her a standing ovation before she said a word. Thank you, she began, voice soft. Lucas believed no one should fight alone. When he was diagnosed, he didn't ask, why me? He asked, how do we help other people survive this? She was good. She always had been. She told a neat version of the story: boy gets sick, boy builds trust, brave wife carries the vision forward. When she reached, we've been modernizing the fund, the slide behind her flipped to 3 words. Guardrails. Oversight. Accountability. The same words Lucas had typed in that unsent email. Words he never meant for her to own. My fingers tightened around the edge of the table. I promised him, she said, that I would protect this fund from waste and abuse. That I would make sure every dollar is guarded, not just given away. That I would build systems that. She didn't finish systems. Near the side door, Alvarez straightened and moved forward, stepping into the spill of light at the base of the stage, close enough that the floor mic picked him up. "Ms. Megan Hart," he called. His voice rolled out through the ballroom speakers. The room froze. The projector fan whirred in a sudden silence. Megan blinked, caught halfway between a smile and confusion. She leaned toward the mic. "I'm sorry," she said, trying a little laugh. "Detective Alvarez, Denver PD Financial Crimes," he said, holding up a folded document. "We need you to step down from the podium, please." A murmur rippled through the tables. Megan's laugh came again, thinner. "Everyone, I'm so sorry. My father-in-law has been." "This isn't about him," Alvarez said, still calm. "We have warrants for your arrest and for Mr. Elliot Hart's, on suspicion of charity fraud, theft, and related offenses." At Elliot's name, a man at a front table half rose, glanced at the far exit, and stopped when one of Alvarez's plainclothes stepped neatly into his path. My legs twitched like they wanted to go with them. I stayed in my chair. On stage, Megan's smile cracked. "You can't do this in front of," she started. "In front of the people you've been asking for money?" Alvarez said. "That's exactly where I'm supposed to do it." He nodded to the detective beside him. The cuffs came out, metal catching the stage lights. Gasps shivered through the room. A few people lifted their phones automatically, trained by 1,000 other shocks to record this one too. "This is a mistake," Megan said, voice going high and sharp now. "I loved Lucas. I'm protecting his legacy. You have no idea what you're doing." "You're under arrest," Alvarez said. "You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. If you can't afford one, one will be provided for you." He didn't have to finish the rest, everyone in that room had heard the words before, if only on TV. As the detective reached the top step and took her arm, Megan's eyes scanned the crowd until she found me at the back. For a second, it was just the two of us across a sea of linen and flowers. I didn't stand. I didn't speak. I just let her see that I wasn't surprised, that this wasn't anger anymore. It was certainty. She looked away first. Behind her, on the giant screen, Lucas's face still smiled, frozen mid-laugh. The string quartet had stopped. The room filled with the rustle of people shifting, whispering, trying to square their donations with the sight of handcuffs on a stage. I let out a breath I'd been holding since the day she changed the locks. Alvarez turned them toward the side exit, warrant packets under his arm, detectives close on either side. I stayed in my chair, like I'd promised. The cuffs were his job. Getting us to this moment had been mine. 6 months later, the Hyatt Ballroom was hosting a tech conference, and the only trace of that gala night was a framed newspaper clipping on my kitchen wall. Local Hope Trust director pleads guilty in charity fraud case. The photo showed Megan in a plain blazer, hair flat, eyes down, standing next to her lawyer. No black dress, no soft lighting, no anchor leaning toward her. She'd taken a deal, 18 months in federal prison, restitution on every documented dollar, and a condition that she never serve on a nonprofit board again. Elliot got 24 months on conspiracy and money laundering charges. Alvarez told me he cried harder at sentencing than most of the parents whose rent he'd siphoned. People asked if I thought it was enough. I usually said it wasn't my job anymore to decide, enough. Privately, I took some satisfaction in knowing the government had auctioned off her bags and watch and wired the proceeds straight back into the pot she'd been dipping from. The trust survived. Barely. The bank had been eager to negotiate once Megan stopped paying the mortgage and the case hit the news. We worked out a sane number, I signed the papers and took the deed. The trust leased the downstairs from me at a symbolic rate. The master bedroom became a conference room with cheap chairs and a scarred table. The living room turned into a waiting area with toys in a corner and a coffee machine better than anything in a hospital hallway. Every morning, I walked past Lucas's old room, the drone still on the desk, the posters still on the wall, exactly where he left them, and into the office, where applications sat in neat stacks. Families from all over the state now, a mechanic whose wife needed radiation she couldn't drive to alone. A single mother with a 16-year-old on a transplant list. Grandparents burning through their retirement on leukemia treatments. We couldn't say yes to everyone. But when we said yes, it was clean. Documentation, verification, hospital social workers on speed dial. Dual approvals over a set amount. Outside audits. No relatives, no partners, no consultants anywhere near a payment screen. We made Lucas's guardrails real. One afternoon, I was stamping approved on 3 months' rent for a family about to lose their apartment when an email from Nadia popped up. Subject, another mess. Small education nonprofit in Ohio. Soft, consulting, charges, weird patterns. Mind taking a look and telling me if I'm paranoid? I opened the spreadsheet sheet attached. Different charity, different shells, but the rhythm was familiar, same amounts, same spacing, same slightly too clever descriptions. Different vultures, I murmured. Same habits. Apparently I hadn't retired from this part of the job after all. On the corkboard above my desk, next to the newspaper clipping, a crayon drawing was pinned. 2 stick figures, one bald, one with long hair, stood in front of a crooked box labeled hospital. A taller figure with gray scribbles for hair was beside them, Mr. Rob. The note that came with it, in careful, wobbly handwriting, said, "Thank you for helping my little brother so we don't have to sleep in the car. Mom says your son made the trust. I think you are both very brave." I read it at least once a day. 30 years in federal work had taught me most criminals aren't geniuses, they just bet no one is paying attention. The records always tell the truth eventually, if someone bothers to read them. What I was learning now, what Lucas had started, and I was finally catching up to, was that the quiet work after the takedown mattered just as much, making sure something good stayed solid, so the next opportunist found steel instead of soft spots. My phone buzzed with another application notification. Another family in trouble. I opened the file, read, verified, and did what Lucas had asked me to do if he was ever too sick to fight about it. I picked up the stamp and pressed it down once, hard. Approved. A year to the day after Megan's sentencing, I found myself sitting in a high school auditorium that smelled like floor polish and popcorn. The banner over the stage read, Community Heroes Night, which was generous but inaccurate. Half the program was a marching band fundraiser. The other half was plaques for outstanding volunteers, and a slideshow of kids posing awkwardly with local business owners. I was there because one of the hospital social workers had nominated the trust. Nobody told me until the committee called asking for a representative. "You're the representative," Nisha had said. "We'll keep the lights on. Go smile at the teenagers." So I sat in the third row, tie a little crooked, while a kid in a too big blazer read names off note cards. "And our next honoree," he said, squinting, "is the Lucas Kane Support Trust." Polite applause. The social worker nudged me. "That's you." I went up, took a cheap acrylic plaque, shook the kid's hand. A teacher snapped a photo. Somebody handed me a microphone. "Anything you'd like to say?" the principal asked, smiling like she expected 3 harmless sentences. "Keep it short," the social worker whispered. "I'll try," I said. I looked out at parents in jackets, kids in hoodies, a few people clearly still in work clothes. "My son Lucas started the trust when he was about the age some of you are now," I said. He'd just been told he had leukemia. On the way out of the hospital parking lot, he saw a family sleeping in their car. A knot of teenagers along the back wall stopped scrolling their phones. He couldn't stop thinking about that, I went on. Not about drug names or lab numbers, about the fact that some people had to choose between paying for treatment and having a place to sleep. The trust exists so that, when we can, we help tip that choice back toward both. When I finished, the applause felt real. A girl in the front row swiped at her eyes with a sleeve and glared at herself for doing it. In the lobby afterward, parents drifted past with paper cups of punch. A man in a work shirt with a tire shop logo stopped in front of me. "You're Kane?" he asked. "That's me." He gripped my hand, calluses scraping my knuckles. "You helped my sister last year. Her little boy, Mason. The trust covered their rent when she had to move closer to the children's hospital." I remembered the file. Stage 4. Notices on the door. "How are they?" I asked. "Not great," he said honestly. "But they're not on the street. That's something." He hesitated. "She told me about what those people did with the money. The ones they arrested. I just wanted to say, I'm glad somebody was watching." He didn't mean me, not specifically. He meant anybody who bothered to pay attention. It still landed. Later that night, back at the house where nobody needed a microphone, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and the day's mail. Bills, flyers, one thick envelope from a law firm back east. Inside was a check, modest, but unexpected, and a typed note. "As part of the restitution agreement in United States v. Hart et al., enclosed please find disbursement to the Lucas Kane Support Trust. Megan and Elliot, paying it back in slow installments, whether they liked it or not. Pennies on the original damage, but better than nothing." I set the check with the others. Numbers in a ledger. Nothing more, nothing less. On the corkboard, the crayon drawing of Mr. Rob and the bald stick figure kid had faded at the edges. I'd pinned a second drawing next to it, this one from Mason. Sloppier lines, brighter colors. A house with a roof, a car in the driveway, not a parking lot this time. Underneath, in block letters, "Thank you for my bed." My phone buzzed, an email from Nadia. Ohio case flipped. Board doing the right thing. P.S. Our training unit wants a guest speaker on how not to get fooled by pretty invoices. Interested? I smiled. Send me the date. I typed back. I'll bring slides and ugly examples. Then I opened the trust portal, checked balances, skimmed tomorrow's stack of applications. There would always be people who saw tragedy as a revenue stream, who learned just enough words, guardrails, impact, oversight, to disguise a siphon as a service. But there would also be families who just needed a month of rent, a tank of gas, a little time not to be evicted while their kid fought for one more scan. Lucas had built something for them. My job now was simple, if not easy: keep it honest. Keep it working. Keep paying attention. I shut down the laptop, turned off the kitchen light, and paused in the hallway outside his old room, the drone still on the desk, the posters still on the wall. "Still yelling when it looks shady," I said quietly. Then I went to bed, knowing there'd be more work in the morning. Exactly the way he wanted it.